Mary Sensei, welcome. And to everyone else, I just want to say, Mary Sensei and I have been friends since 1973. An amazing amount of time now. And it's amazing to have friends that long. And I first met Mary Sensei in 1972 when she was on a visit. She was living in Japan, but she came on a visit to Santa Cruz, and I met her briefly. And then I went to Japan the next year in 1973, and Mary Sensei had been living there, like already, I think, at least 5 years, maybe 6, and doing this amazing, intensive study and training, and not only in Aikido, where she had a Nidan, which was a high rank at that point, especially for an American person, and especially an American woman. But she was doing so many other things, and she was fluent in Japanese, and she just really knew the culture and was studying so many things. I was just astonished to encounter someone like Mary Sensei. I had never met anyone like her before. And she was so kind in helping me and my couple of friends, introducing me into the training and Japanese culture and so on. And really, I was just, and still am, so impressed. And I really kind of she showed me what was possible, the things I didn't even realize were possible for somebody to do, somebody like me. And then I really kind of followed. And she opened so many doors for me, and we've then continued to be tremendous friends and collaborators on the retreat and many things since then. So with that, and of course Mary Sensei is teaches all over, and she's 7th Dan and just a treasure in the Aikido community. I wanted to just maybe just ask you something, Mary, at the beginning, and please take it anywhere you'd like. But I was wondering, like, thinking back on that period, that initial period of, those years of your training in Japan, and how incredibly focused and full of study and training you were. I was wondering what motivated you during that time, and, what kind of experiences did you have? You motivated me, but what motivated you?
Well, I was motivated by seeing O-Sensei in 1965. And I was studying, I was in Japan as an exchange student for 1 year. And I was studying Japanese at Keio University. And in my class was Robert Fraser Sensei, but not a sensei back then, just a young man like I was a young woman. But he was training Aikido at Hombu Dojo. And after some time of me going, no, he dragged me off to Hombu Dojo to witness a class. And it just happened that evening, O-Sensei came and lectured and demonstrated. And there's the phrase blow your mind, but it kind of literally blew my mind. I was a different person at the end of seeing him. And he may have been on the mat for 20, 30 minutes. I'm not sure how long totally he was on the mat. But what I saw made me realize that despite my, to date, excellent education, there was a whole realm in the universe that I knew nothing about. And I wanted to know it. I just wanted to know it. And so I was at the end of my visa. So I only trained for about maybe a month, and then I had to come back to the United States. But I determined I would study everything I could about Japan, Japanese culture, Shinto religion. There was a guy in Seattle who briefly taught some Aikido. I tried to take his classes, but I finally made my way back to Japan. But the initial motivation, the seeing O-Sensei and seeing that there was a whole nother realm of existence that I didn't understand at all, has continued to be my motivating, continued to motivate me through all these years. And I really, when I watched O-Sensei, the words, "This will save my life," went through my head. And I was so kind of astonished because I was having the happiest year of my life at the age of 19. I had turned 20 in January in Japan. And I just thought that is so bizarre a thing to go through my head. But, you know, when I looked back, I realized that I was actually a very introverted person, really alienated from people in general. And I could have gone a bad, dark way and gotten more and more isolated and alienated. And but once I saw O-Sensei, I just stepped into another, well, Nado Sensei would like to say, dimension, and and the whole world just like suddenly it was opening instead of closing. So that initial motivation was then added to that was the motivation of watching how profoundly wonderful and useful Aikido was for everyone, and how people training didn't just train for health or social get together, but they were changing. They were really changing. This was particularly observable to me in Shingu as we trained our brains out when we were down there. People don't, Linda, people don't know what we went through. Well, Jack knows, Jack Wada knows, but
Oh, we'll have to share those stories.
oh my God, yeah. But anyway, it has profoundly, and to the core level, changed the kind of person that I am for the better. And I keep trying to move in that direction. Aikido will always be my path. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that.
yeah, I
And,
know.
you know, I was also thinking about, you know, your experience and then my experience after you, or, you know, also concurrently of being a foreigner in Japan back then when there weren't so many, you know, foreigners and Aikido hadn't spread all over the place. And, you know, I've heard you talk about some pretty intense experiences that you had as a gaijin, and you know, kind of trying to make your place in a world that was, there were hardly any women and not so many. And when we went to Shingu, which by the way, everybody, Mary Sensei was the one who introduced me and Jack Wada and Dick Revore and various other people to the teachers in Shingu. And so for me, after I was in Tokyo for a short time, I moved down to Shingu. And then Mary Sensei had been in Tokyo a long time, and then she also moved down to Shingu some of the time after that. But at any rate, being a gaijin, a foreigner in the Kumano area was, you know, just outrageous, really. I mean, they just didn't have any down there. So I was wondering if you could speak to any of that experience.
Well, your experience as a foreigner in the remote area of Kumano was more intense than mine in Tokyo, because Tokyo had, not like it is now, but it had its share of foreigners. In Hombu Dojo, there were very few women training. There were almost no foreign women training. I think in 5 years, I might have seen 3 or 4 foreign women, one of whom was around, I think, almost a year. But the main difficulty was in terms of training at the dojo was to try to be taken seriously as an Aikidoist, because they just didn't get why I was training. People would ask me constantly, "Why are you doing Aikido?"
Mm-hmm.
And they thought maybe I'm looking for a boyfriend, or you know, maybe it's going to look good on my bridal CV. We're looking for a hubby, is that I'll have something a little different, you know. And it just, the idea that that I had to learn Aikido, that I was driven to learn Aikido was just too foreign. So I gave up. After a while, I just said, I do it because it's fun. And I like it. I just say, tanoshii desu, you know, oh, it's entertaining, it's fun. I just gave up trying to explain anything. I remember going down, because I've been going down to Shingu since 1970. That's the first time I saw Hikitsuchi Sensei and the Shingu Kumano-juku Dojo in that area had gone down with a Japanese friend from Hombu Dojo, and we did a shugyo training trip, hiking and walking and visiting. He wanted to see Hikitsuchi Sensei because he'd seen him at Hombu Dojo. But I was like, oh yeah, okay, so I'm along for the ride, basically. But the encounter was different from O-Sensei, but also very inspiring and moving to me at that time. I thought, you're just having a much harder time than me. I was really fluent in Japanese. If people didn't look at me, they thought they were talking to a Japanese. But once they turned around and saw who I was, sometimes people would go, oh, no English, no English, even though I'd been talking to them and they'd been answering in Japanese. But you remember, you know, you're a young woman, you're beautiful, you have this long blonde hair. And there was a singer, remember, in Japan at that time,
Yamamoto Rinda.
Yamamoto Rinda, and she had, maybe, did she dye her hair blonde?
I don't remember.
I have no idea, but poor Linda. Every time we walked down the street, somebody would run out and say, Yamamoto Rinda, and keep calling her that over and over. I think at one point you said the next person that calls you that, you think you're going to strangle.
Well, before that, it was just that, I mean, just the experience of walking down the street. And when I first got to Shingu, you know, because you hadn't moved down yet and nobody had come down yet, I was the only one there. I was staying in the youth hostel, and then I would have to get out of the youth hostel during the day and walk the streets of Shingu.
That's right, because they don't let you be there during the day.
People just staring and shouting at me, and children would run away, and people would shout, Gaijin, Gaijin. And this went on. It wasn't just those first couple of weeks. I mean, that went on. Oh. It was an amazing experience of being different and being visible and being seen as just other and kind of like not human. I mean, and literally, I remember a little girl told me once that I wasn't human, you know?
Yeah.
And then I remember this one time, it just somehow epitomizes this. I think maybe it was when you were down there and we did that amazing demonstration out in the fields of.
Oh yeah, I remember it was so hot.
Picture. But at any rate, I was at someone's house and they were, you know, hosting, you know, giving me tea and everything. Well, one of my blonde hairs had fallen out somewhere. I mean, it does that once in a while, right? We lose hairs. And someone came up and returned it to me. Like it was an object they didn't know what to do with.
Maybe it had a life of its own. Who knows?
Yeah, it was, you know, I started to feel like I just was like a weird person, you know, but, you know, on the other hand, people were welcoming in so many other ways.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had to get used to that in Tokyo too. The first year I was there, 64 to 65, 68, yeah. I lived with a Japanese family and they were so kind and wonderful, and everyone really was so kind and helpful. But I would get on the train and I would sit there and every eye would be on me. And in Japan, it's not rude to stare at people. So I was so self-conscious, and some people would have this kind of like neutral stare. Some people would be going like, what is that object over there? And some people would have a hostile expression on their face. But having everybody look at me was unnerving in the beginning. But then I got used to it. And you can tend to get used to things. But most people were very, very kind. People are always polite, and many people were very kind. I had a wonderful year with that family, and they're all passed on now. But yeah, now when you think about the whole Kumano area, now it's like a World Heritage, it's a UNESCO Heritage Center. Tourists, well, not right now, but generally tourists flood into the area, and so people are accustomed to that.
Beautiful.
I know, it's so beautiful, and people, the local people are accustomed to seeing a variety of human beings from many countries throughout the world, and it's younger generations and younger generations. So
And the dojo or dojos there have welcomed a lot of
I,
foreigners, but
I
really you were the one who started that. You know, there were a couple of other people came from Hombu, but mostly, you like introduced people and then it grew from there. So that's really changed over the years.
yeah,
It's more of an Aikido center there.
I remember that I think it was in 72, I took a group of foreigners who were training at Hombu Dojo. That included Kathy Bates, who had shown up to train for a while. And I took them down for a 10-day trip. We visited Ise, we went on all the way down to Shingu. And then I can't remember where we stayed, but maybe that Iroha Inn, you remember that place. And, but we did training every day, and I arranged for Zen sitting, and I just tried to make like a 10-day program for people. But that group were the first foreigners.
And then Kathy told me about it, and that's really how
That's,
that, yeah. But I want to mention, so just so everyone who's listening, I want you to notice, like, so Mary Sensei, she organized this, right? And it was like a big thing, and nobody had done this before, right? To bring a group down there. This is like someone who just does these kind of things, like creates them, and with this amazing sort of determination. And I remember, Mary Sensei, that that first year when I was living in Japan, you had introduced me down there, 1973, and then you moved down, and that was kind of your last 6 months in Japan, I believe, in Shingu. Well, here's a story for you. Mary Sensei, in August in Japan, which is so hot and so humid, it's very difficult to train during that time. And we were training morning and night, right? And sometimes during the day. What does Mary Sensei do? She organized a 11-day gashku, an 11-day seminar, a gaijin gashku. That means a seminar for foreigners. And there weren't that many foreigners studying Aikido in Japan at that point. She invited people from Tokyo. She invited people from Iwama. There were a few foreigners here and there. We gathered, they came to Shingu, and we had an 11-day Aikido seminar in the middle of the summer.
yes.
Where we did more than we were doing. We got up really early in the morning, we meditated, and then we trained, and then we did this, and then we did that all day for 11 days in the summer. And when I look back on that, it was just amazing. So really, hats off to you. And again, I've been trying to, I was inspired by all of that. After I survived it, I was inspired by it. I wanted to ask you another thing, and then maybe after you've answered a little bit, we'll open it up for questions from people, because it'd be really good to invite some other people. But I was thinking about how you started so many things. After you came back from Japan, you taught for a year in Santa Cruz, and then you moved up to Seattle, back up to Seattle. And then there you created a dojo. And this was back, it was just like 74, 75, something like that, Seattle School of Aikido. That was not like things are now. This was really creating something from scratch, being a true pioneer. And I was thinking how, even though that period of time is very different from this period of time, I was also reflecting that we are in a period of time here where we're in uncharted territory. We're needing to create new things. We have to be, have some resoluteness and creativity, and that sense of like gambate, like I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna do everything I can. And so I was just wondering if you might reflect on something of your experience then, like creating this dojo new, and what kept you going, through some difficulties there.
Well, I think the main thing that has always kept me going is Aikido itself. The knowledge from my own experience that it is something of great value to human beings. Mm-hmm. And it's something that's worth doing anything to put out there and give people the opportunity to encounter. I was also I think the last 3 weeks I was in Shingu, I had gotten a letter from Bob Fraser Sensei, and through Kathy Bates, we had gotten reconnected. And he told me that the teacher in the Santa Cruz, that did the Santa Cruz kind of mm, gym classes of Aikido. There was the university offered classes, and then there was a club. And he said the guy teaching those classes was leaving. He heard I was coming back to America. Maybe I would like to teach in Santa Cruz. And that's how I ended up teaching in Santa Cruz. But I was coming back with the idea that I needed to start a dojo. But this idea was only like 3 weeks old in my brain because it had never occurred to me to teach Aikido. I never had ever thought of it. But at lunch in Shingu one day, I had my chopsticks halfway up to my mouth, and Hikitsuchi Sensei said, well, you know, when you go back and you start a dojo, you have to invite me. And I'm like, you know, what? Dojo? Start a dojo? What? But, you know, I don't know. When you're young, you don't know anything, which is really helpful because if you knew everything that would come up when you had a dojo, you probably wouldn't start it. But I just, sorry, it's making me laugh. Um, and the funny thing is, the first thing that went through my brain was how big American men were. You know, I've been training in Japan and I've been reveling in my strength because frankly, back then I was stronger than about a third of the Japanese men I trained with. But I was the average size for a Japanese guy back then.
Yeah.
And that's all changed now, of course. But I said, Sensei, what do I do if some really big, strong guy comes into the dojo? And he says, well, you know what to do. I said, I do? And he said, yeah, you trust it to the kami-sama. Kami-sama ni makaseru. And I went, oh, well, okay. All right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And
Kind of like saying having faith, right?
yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
not quite the Christian idea of having faith, but just sort of like there's it's not all up to me and my own brain. There's all kinds of stuff supporting me in the universe, all my teachers, all the training, you know, O-Sensei spirit. There's just all of that is kind of around. So I said, well, okay. And as you know, then I came back and taught in Santa Cruz. We could have another conversation about our late night meals and talking when you came back from the Italian restaurant and brought food. I was so poor, I didn't hardly.
We were both so poor. Yeah.
I was so poor back then. You'd bring a lot of leftover food. We would eat the food and talk. And but yeah, I just you know, you receive so much from your teachers. You receive an incredible amount from your teachers, so much more than you think you've actually received. And you may feel all this gratitude for what you've received. And then over the years, you realize that more and more and more really have been given to you. And it's been stored kind of out of reach, but now you're reaching it. And so gratitude, I think, grows through the years. And it was partly out of a sense of gratitude to O-Sensei and my teachers that, and a belief in Aikido's power to help people that gave me the oomph to open the dojo in Seattle.
And thank you for that. That's beautiful. And I just am thinking that even though it's a different situation, this is also a situation where we need to draw upon our resources.
Yes.
And be grateful for, you know, what we have been given, and, you know, be creative and persistent, and with that sense of really keeping helping Aikido thrive, because it is this precious treasure, you know, that helps all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that because, you know, really we could go on and on, but I would really love to invite some other people to you know, to ask a question. And so so Penny Sensei is going to be looking over and seeing who's raising a hand. You can raise your hand. I believe it's in the participant. If you go to your participant options on your screen somewhere and you click on that, there's a thing that says raise hand. And we'd love to have you just raise your hand if you'd like to have, and then Penny will look it over and call on someone, and Josie will unmute you, and so on. And then Mary Sensei and I will respond.
Okay.
Okay, I thought I would start off with a question to Mary Heiny Sensei. It's so powerful. I've heard you tell the story many times, but it just overwhelms me each time, the response you had immediately to being in the presence of O-Sensei. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. I think it's important for the future of Aikido, how the rest of us and going forward, the future generations can access contact with the spirit of O-Sensei. Two-part question. Also, you guys were young and you could just give yourself over to the training. And yet a lot of people, you know, have responsibilities. They're older, they can't. So I'm just thinking about the future of Aikido, how to have access and how we can grow within the confines of the lives we have.
Can I start?
Yeah, go, Mary Sensei.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of contacting the spirit O-Sensei, there's a number of simultaneous approaches. I think one is that if you have a teacher who feels that, who actually has a sense of respect, affection for O-Sensei as the you know, the kaiso, the person who developed Aikido, and encourages you to read what is available. There's like nowadays there's books. I mean, there's John Stevens books. Ueshiba Kishomaru Sensei has written about O-Sensei. There's a number of there are a number of books, and Susan Perry and I went to Japan together, interviewed a lot of people who had encountered O-Sensei, and out of that she wrote a book called Remembering O-Sensei. You can watch videos. Some of, you know, a lot doesn't come across on a videotape, but or a piece of film, but it's something. And then you want to focus your training so that it's not just trying to be technically proficient at whatever level your body can achieve that, because our bodies are limited, become more and more limited as we age. But your openness, like your open-minded and open-heartedness, can grow forever. And through that, you can begin to feel O-Sensei's energy. And if your teacher is someone dedicated to O-Sensei, you can feel that through your teacher too. They help you along the way that way. So, you know, Western life, especially current Western life, is very different from what we were going through in Japan. We went to Japan to train. So we organized everything to accommodate training. But nowadays, it's harder to live, frankly, than it was when I opened my school. And so people might make it, really dedicated people might be able to get 2 to 3 times a week to the dojo, whereas we used to go every day. And so the thing to do, I think, is to do the best you can and be consistent. I think that consistency is what's really important. Over time, it's consistent. If it's only 2 times a week, it's always 2 times a week. It's not, we go 5 times and then you miss for 3 weeks and then you do 2 times, you know. You got to find some way to organize your life so you can be consistent in your training. Yeah, Linda, you want to also address that?
Well, I would just maybe briefly, because I'd like other people to speak, but yeah, I'm thinking about the kind of attitude or stance of that something is possible rather than something is not possible. And so, yeah, it is, of course, you know, like I never met O-Sensei personally, and, you know, but I did study with his students and so on. And you could think, well, access to O-Sensei could be getting, you know, more and more diminished as we go on. But, you know, I think that just to have a kind of the spirit of like having a sense of open invitation to that connection with O-Sensei. And then, as Mary Sensei was saying, you know, through your teachers, through what you read, through what you experience, It's kind of a spirit, and that's the same spirit of like not thinking, oh, we can't train now, but like, oh, but how can we train,
Mhm.
and open ourselves to those possibilities. And also, well, I'll just quote Hikitsuchi Sensei, who was quoted through my friend Jean-Pierre Sensei in Switzerland. He asked Hikitsuchi Sensei one time, he said, I never met O-Sensei. How can I have a connection with O-Sensei? And Hikitsuchi Sensei answered in a very quick way, which he often did, very quick and definite, like, well, this is it. And he said, well, it's easy. He said, you get a picture of O-Sensei and you put it in your house, and you go up every day to the picture and you just say, thank you. And that you kind of establish the sense of, and Mary Sensei was saying, respect and affection, for the founder, and gratitude, and just like see where that leads you. And Hikitsuchi Sensei said, so, and then you will start to build a relationship.
Mhm.
So that was what I wanted to add there.
That was really nice. Yeah. Yeah. Terry Dodson had something interesting to say. One time I was talking to him and he said, O-Sensei's presence is so strong, his spirit was so strong that even when he said I'd go to a dojo where, nothing was ever said about O-Sensei, or nothing was explained, people didn't know about his history or anything, but there would be a picture of him. And he would watch people look at the picture and kind of, he could tell that they were feeling something. And he asked one guy, one of the students, I see you looking at the picture. And he would say, yeah, I just don't know anything about this man, but there's just something, there's something there. There's something I want, there's something there. And even just a photograph of O-Sensei at a dojo, just that had within itself some power to attract a sincere person.
I wanted to jump in one very short thing, Penny, about your part of your question. It's like, well, we were young and we were just, going full tilt every day, hours every day and everything. And, that's not possible, for most people. It's not possible for me at this point either. But I just wanted to say that I think it's a matter of being on your growing edge. Like, whatever puts you on a growing edge, I think that's what makes the Aikido growth and development possible. And so for instance, like when Mary Sensei organized that foreigner Gashku, I mean, we were already training all the time. She made us go into our growing edge by doing more than that. So if you go from zero, what you're doing, and then you do your twice a week and you push it a little bit and you expand yourself, I think that enables the Aikido processes to happen. So it's really relative to who you are and what your body can do. It's not a matter of you have to do all this stuff, you have to be on your growing edge. So let's get somebody else. Let's get another
okay.
question in here.
All right. Josie, could you unmute Mary Tesoro?
Mary.
Okay, you're unmuted.
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you for doing this. And
You're always so beautiful. Oh my God.
you're so kind. Well, I'm going to ask for a story, but I first want to say that I have never stopped being impressed. In fact, it grows with the both of you, Mary and Linda, that you did what you did. I think of you both like pioneers, like we learned about the pioneers who came across the country in the early days, because I can't imagine going to Japan as gaijin and women and doing what you did and bringing it back. And I see, feel, know the connection between that and the growth of Aikido and the inclusion of women in Aikido. So my request is for one story I heard you tell many years ago, and I'm sure lots of people know it, but Mary Sensei, you spoke about what O-Sensei, you saw O-Sensei do, or perhaps you heard the story. I think you were there when there were a lot of men training at Humble Dojo. Okay, good.
Okay, I remember this story. Do you
All
want?
right.
Okay.
How women were welcomed by him. Yes.
Yeah, O-Sensei was himself was very welcoming of women, and there were several occasions where I saw him, you know, pursue that actively. One day I was training, and O-Sensei walked into the room. Now this is really toward the end of his life, because he's, let's see, it was when I got back to Japan. It was December of '68, and he died in April of '69. And he'd take a couple guys to get him up the stairs, you know, but once he stepped on the mat, bang, there's just flooded energy in the room. And he steps on the mat, everybody stops training, we all bow. And then he said, "You men," pointing across the room. He said, "You men, you're not studying Aikido, you're just out there competing with each other to see who's the strongest." And then he whips around and points to the little clump of Japanese women by the door, because Japanese rooms have high points and low points, and the lowest point is always by the door. And they're there, and he says, "These women, they're studying Aikido." He said, "You guys should be partnering with them because they're actually studying Aikido." And then he did some demonstration and things like that, and some, you know, talk of Izanagi and Izanami, and then he left the room. And there was this moment of real discomfort. I mean, and then everybody just went back to what they were doing. But yes, but I realized, you know, I was in the kind of the midpoint of the line of people. Were lined up like a staple, kind of like that. And I realized I had been looking at the men as the real Aikido people and not training with the women, who always kept together in a kind of clump by the door and trained with each other. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm choosing to train with men all the time. I should be training with these women. Well, so from that point, I started, you know, you have to sit so that you can ask the person next to you to train. And because you have the same partner for the whole hour at Hombu. And so, you know, I started training with the women, but they were much harder for me to train with because they really knew their stuff. And they all came up to here on me. And so their centers of gravity was so low that trying to like get under for a shihonage or something, they all had incredible base, presence, ki extension. They were strong, incredibly strong, and they were so short. And I was, you know, I'm used to being really short in whatever group I'm in, but in Japan, I was not short. I was average. And so I would train with them, but I didn't train only with them because the guys, most of whom were a little bit taller than me, were just easier to toss around and easier to. But there are a number of stories where O-Sensei specifically encouraged women to do Aikido and to do Aikido through their whole lives. He even said at one point, it's a different situation, but he said that women actually had a special ability in Aikido. And because they weren't wasting time trying to show who's stronger when they were training, they would just immediately started to study Aikido and not waste time. So that was one of the things he said.
So Penny, do you have another, you see another person?
We have one more, yeah.
Go ahead.
Josie, could you unmute Emily Honig?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. So Mary Sensei, I have a question that maybe has more to do with the current situation we're in. And so I think of you, my experience of being in classes with you is that you are so acutely aware of and rely so much on the energy of your partners. And I'm wondering, in doing Aikido, teaching Aikido on Zoom, obviously you don't have the same sense of energy that you would have when you're in person. And I wonder what your experience of that is.
When my friends were trying to get me to do Zoom, which, you know, I'm not a techie person, so I was like, oh my gosh, you know, Zoom, what should to do? But as we were doing this, I remember having coffee. One of the first Zoom things I did was have coffee with friends to kind of get me used to this, this thing of looking at people on computers and doing things. And we were talking about Aikido, and it was May. You and May and I were having coffee one morning, and we talked about something about, and I said, yeah, you know, it's just like this. I said, and I jumped up and I said, May, can you do a Yokomen Uchi? And she jumped up and she did Yokomen Uchi, and I felt it. I felt the energy, the angle of the energy. I felt like the two of us, although she's in Massachusetts. I mean, we were hundreds, 1,000 miles apart, and I could feel her. And that was the moment I realized that I could use Zoom, that I could teach on Zoom. So when I have had occasion to teach classes on Zoom, one of the things and Linda Sensei might do something like this too, I'm not sure, but before I bow in and start anything, I first of all sit and look at all the people that I can see on the screen. And many of them I know, so I can remember the affection, the warmth in my heart toward them. Other people I don't know at all, but my heart feels so open from the initial view of everybody that I feel a sense, a tangible kind of kinesthetic, or maybe somatic is a better word, sense of being with these other people. And I've been startled that and surprised at how I could feel that through this highly technical software program that we're all using that I know nothing about. And yet just seeing somebody's face and being able to talk to them in real time, you know, we're both Aikidos. Even if I don't know who you are, I know that we're both trying to understand Aikido. We're focused toward the good that Aikido can do for us and for individually and for everyone. I remember I was just stunned at that moment. And then I thought, yes, I can use Zoom to teach Aikido. And so that was a really important moment for me. How about yourself, Linda Sensei, with using Zoom?
Yeah, so I'm going to make my answer brief, because I mean, here we are, we've had our short and sweet event. It's been, it's actually almost 11:30, and we'll have to bring it to a close. But yeah, it's been an amazing exploration of this what seemed impossible at first, of practicing and trying things, getting better at it. You know how O-Sensei always says, you get better at what you practice, and like I'm getting better at Zoom, getting better at Zoom teaching and trying different things. And also I recognize what you're saying, and it is a beautiful thing, so unexpected to feel that connection through this medium. And yet, if you think about it, I mean, we are in an art that, and with a founder that talks about, this not being a matter of time or space.
Yes.
The connection, the unity that actually connects all of us. So we're exploring this in new ways. So I'm gonna say that I'm really looking forward to these continuing explorations with the summer retreat that's coming up on July 11th and 12th. You're all invited, and if you wish to participate, just go to my dojo website, the aikidosantacruz.org, which you already interacted with to get here. And there's information and a registration for the summer retreat, which Mary Sensei and I will be co-teaching as usual, as we've been doing for 27 years. This is just going to be a creative format, hopefully just 1 year of this creative format. And then Jan Nevelius Sensei, a wonderful Swedish Aikido teacher who I'm honored to call a dear friend. And he's going to join us this year. And he can join us this year, you know, he's in Sweden, but he'll be with us.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm Mary Sensei. I am always pleased to continue our conversations, and this has been fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for
You can see we could have gone on for another hour or two, and maybe we will in the future, but anyway, we will be continuing during the summer retreat. And thank you for everything that you continue to do for Aikido and for the Aikido community.
Thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I've really enjoyed our conversation and the questions, and I'm looking forward to the retreat. I'm just like, what else can we figure out? What else can we do? How can we make this a really fantastic experience for everyone? So I hope to see you there. I will see you there, but I hope to see everybody else there too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I want to thank everyone who's helped to make this possible today. You know, of course, starting with Mary Sensei, also Josie Weaver, who is the technical host, Geraldine Munyon, who's not here today, but really helped me think through how to start this series. Penny Sensei, thank you for helping with the question area, and Jason is also helping with the technical things. And behind everything is Nico Secunda, our wonderful dojo member who has been designing all of our technical things and is also the technical director of the retreat coming up. He's working tirelessly in addition to his regular work to help our Aikido really survive and thrive during this time. So I'm going to sound the bell. Let's take a breath, and then we'll say, see you next time.
All right.